Let's bring in retired Major General and Bondi Partners Senior Advisor now, Gus McLachlan. Gus, thanks for your time. Let's start with Pete Hegseth, the demand or the number that he put to Richard Marles this week on what Australia's defence spending should increase by. What do you make of it, and how does the government manage it from here?
Yeah, it was a very interesting way that Hegseth passed on this demand, if you like, in a short summary of the meeting. That's fairly unusual in my experience, Kieran. But the broad message was not unexpected. I think the Deputy Prime Minister would have expected some sort of exchange like that. That's about the benchmark that the US are setting. I think one of the challenges that the Deputy Prime Minister has is I'm not sure that he has carried all his cabinet colleagues in Australia with the demand or with the compelling case for the demand for that sort of increase in the face of other pressures in the economy. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see if they are capable of increasing defence spending. The other, there's two other commentators that have made remarks about this that I think it's important because I respect them immensely. One is Peter Lay, my old boss, Chief of the Army. Peter was as good a leader as I experienced in my time in the service. And I think he's just trying to express fairly frankly and openly that the challenge that Australia faces is increasing, whether we like it or not. And I think we're going to have to address some of Peter's concerns. The other guy that I find really interesting, Kieran, is Peter Dean. And Peter was involved in the authoring of the Defence Strategic Review for the Labor government. And the fact that Peter's come out and said he also supports an increase in spending, I think is fairly telling. So Australia is going to have to respond in some manner. I'm not sure whether it'll be able to get to 3.5%, but I think we're going to have to see some increases in defence spending.
And just look at what we've seen in recent times in conflict zones. Can we learn from some of that? I know it's on the other side of the world, but that incredible attack on the Russian bombers by Ukrainian drones, is that the way that our defence planners need to be thinking?
Kieran, I think it's incredibly important and illustrative. I should just start for transparency purposes declaring that I do advise a couple of counter-drone technology companies. One is L3 Harris and the other is a great Australian company, Drone Shield. But I think what's incredibly important coming out of Ukraine is the speed of their adaptation cycle. From innovation to adoption, we think is as quick as 100 days. And the problem we have in Australia is our processes are geared towards huge exotic projects like submarines, frigates, ships, tanks, etc., which are very slow and deliberate, probably for good reason. We don't want to waste taxpayers' money. But the speed that the Ukrainians are demonstrating technology is changing is effectively catching us out. And I think one of the things that we're going to have to do in Australia is adjust the way we acquire technology. We will need those huge, exotic, expensive projects. I'm a believer in the need for an advanced submarine, for example. But we are going to need to find a way to be far quicker and more agile in the gaps between those major capabilities. So yes, we've got a lot to learn from Ukraine.
And on the peace talks between Russia and, well, the so-called peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, where to from here? There's not a lot of optimism, I think, around most defence analysts when they look at Putin and just that Donald Trump is starting to realise as well that he's just not an individual that anyone can put any faith in at all.
Yeah, Kieran, I think there's lessons in even that process for Australia. This notion that might is right, there's re-emerging into state-on-state engagement is becoming clear. And sadly, I think that method of statecraft will probably return to our region. We're, of course, watching the way China is facing across the straits toward Taiwan. And so what Putin is effectively saying to the world is, I am strong enough to attack my neighbours and overrun 20% of my territory, of their territory, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Now, President Trump made claims about what he would be able to achieve. I think he, as you say, he has come up against the reality of Putin, who is an individual I think is being defined by some broader grand vision of Russia's position in history. And whether or not Trump or any other world leaders object to the way he's going about that, I don't think he's likely to change. Having said that, I absolutely admire, well, two things: the stoic defense that the Ukrainians have put up. They have bloodied the nose of Russian forces, incurred a very significant loss of equipment and personnel. But this recent attack shows an ability to really strategically fight back as well. And you recall, President Trump in that now famous meeting in the office, the Oval Office with Zelensky, said to Zelensky, you don't have any cards left to play. Well, Zelensky, to his credit, is showing that that even though they are a much smaller country than Russia, less powerful, they certainly still have cards to play. And we think they have eliminated between 20 and 40% of Russia's long-range nuclear strike capability. That is an extraordinary achievement. So I too am pessimistic that we will see a peace settlement. Hopefully we will see further prisoner exchanges, possibly some stabilisation of fighting on the front lines, but we're a long way from peace in the war in Ukraine.